I'm going to show you how to get multiple guitar tones out of this one guitar. So we just released the Les Paul Studio, and you're probably wondering what's the deal with this guitar, the Les Paul Studio Session. Let's take a look at this elevated offering that's now joining the studio lineup. And make sure you stick around till the end of the video, and I'm gonna show you how this guitar is gonna replace one of the most important pedals on your pedal board. And real quick, before we dive in, make sure you ring the bell, hit the like button, and subscribe to this channel. It'll keep you up to date on future videos. So I thought it'd be great to bring in Master Luthier Jim DeCola to help us break down the differences between the session and the studio to figure out which one is best for you. Jim, as always, thank you so much for joining us, man. I wanted to discuss with you a little bit what the differences are between the Les Paul Studio that I'm holding here and the all-new Les Paul Studio Session. For anyone out there that's on the fence about these two models, or has any thoughts or questions on why we came out with this newer studio model now.
Okay, so really what drove it, we had a lot of fans, who are very passionate about the studio.
Yeah.
It's been in our product line for several decades now.
Okay.
And over all that time, we try to freshen it up from time to time, and then along the way, people, may buy a studio from this year and they get accustomed to it and they really love that version of it. Maybe another version, another fan has it, and over time as it evolves, people are kind of vocal, why don't you bring this back, or why don't you do the version with this, right?
Sure.
So, it's created its own following, and that's very cool because, as the name implies, the Les Paul Studio is intended to have all the sound and performance of Les Paul.
Yes.
And called studio because intending that you could take this into the studio and it's going to do the exact same job as the standard. It just doesn't have the binding and all the bling and all that stuff, right?
Correct. Yeah, like you said, the workhorse in the studio, getting the job done.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it created its own following.
Okay.
So now we expanded the lineup this year.
Yeah.
So the Les Paul Studio that you're holding kind of reaches back to the last time we did that variation of the studio was in, I believe, 2017.
Okay.
And at that point, we came out with some new finishes, and then we added the cream fingerboard binding to it.
Yeah,
where
nice touch.
Previous versions didn't have that.
Very nice
So,
touch.
so it's that version because we had a lot of people, and it was time to kind of freshen it up anyway.
Sure. Okay.
So that model has the Burstbucker Pro pickups. And again, from that era, they were very popular, and they're a very versatile pickup.
Yeah. Now, we had talked extensively on the last visit with you here on the studio, and we can always, have our viewers, you guys can always check that video out on the channel. So let's dive into exactly what's going to be different on that session versus the studio here.
So now we have the classic studio. What we changed on the session, for one, under the hood, the pickups are 57 and 57 plus.
Okay.
So now we're offering a different color, different sound as, compared to the regular studio.
Right.
And we can get back and touch off on that a little bit more.
Okay.
And then we have the 4 push-pull control assembly, and we've used this on various models over the years. So we have the 2 coil taps, the in-phase and out-of-phase, and then the pure bypass.
Oh, nice. Okay, so a little more advanced stuff going on with the electronics.
Right, yeah,
okay.
yeah, and it still has the classic look, right?
Right.
Now on the studio, we just have the coil taps. We don't have the phase or the pure bypass.
That's right, okay.
So you have that additional feature, so that's why it's this session. It's kind of taking it up. And then most notably, we have the modern neck heel. So it's that sculpted neck heel heel
Oh,
that
right,
provides access, all the way up to the 22nd fret.
Yes.
So that was just a more modern feature that, kind of stepped it up and refined it.
Yeah.
And then lastly, another big change is the ebony fingerboard.
Nice.
So
nice.
ebony just adds a little bit more crispness, to the tone.
Yes.
And then, it just has that feel, very smooth texture. And then also another subtle change, but kind of cool, is, we went with the metal keystone buttons.
Oh, right. Versus the deluxe vintage.
Yeah,
tuners
so
there.
they're the Grover Deluxe with the keystone buttons. So
Nice.
it's still, sharing a common theme with the
Yes.
keystone buttons, but these are the deluxe Grovers compared to the historic vintage style.
Now, I noticed this has got a little figuring on it as well, but I noticed with the sessions we do get figured tops.
Yeah, we have the 2A figured top.
Very nice.
So we're just, again, we're trying to, honor the historic version of the studio that we've, captured all the greatest hits, if you will,
Yeah.
from over the era. And then with here, we're kind of elevating it with the more modern features.
So it is kind of pushing towards the modern and maybe even the Supreme offerings.
That's right.
Okay, cool.
In terms of, the functionality, the sculpted neck joint, ebony fingerboard, and so forth,
Yeah.
it kind of bridges the gap between those models.
So I have maybe it's a silly question, but I have a thing here about the electronics. Out of phase.
Mm-hmm.
I know what it sounds like, and I kind of understand like what happens, especially like if I'm recording and I'm using two microphones, or maybe if I'm using two amps and I have to flip the phase on one of them. Could you kind of help us and maybe break down like what that out of phase thing is?
Sure. So what it does, you can have a pickup that's out of phase with another pickup. Now that's the first rule. You have to have two pickups to be out of phase.
Okay.
So if you're only on, say right now we're in the bridge pickup, and you pull the phase switch, it's not going to do anything. Or if you're in the neck pickup and you pull the phase, it's not going to do anything.
Oh.
So when they're both on and you pull the phase switch up, now it's going to reverse the rhythm pickup.
I see. Okay.
And so when it's combined to the bridge pickup, it will then have a lower output and kind of a nasally sound like that. And that's that classic Peter Green type of tone.
Yes.
And they could be out of phase by simply reversing the hot and ground on the wire or reversing the magnetism. Either way, it will sound the same. But with this, it just makes more sense to do it with the wire because I arrange the magnetism of the pickup such that when they are combined and you single coil them or tap them either way, because they're reverse wind, reverse polarity, then they'll be hum canceling when they're combined. So that's another benefit.
Oh, right. Okay.
Right? And that's when they're both on and they're both tapped or split.
Okay.
And then when you pull the phase, now you're going to have that tap sound, and then out of phase, now you're going to have a lower output, cleaner, kind of funky sound, so you can kind of blend your volumes accordingly, right? And kind of use that as a preset, get kind of a funk rhythm going, and then pull up on the pure bypass and send it straight to the jack. So you have that preset capability, and then push it down and go back into your rhythm. Another benefit with the phase switch is that if you're, say, in the rhythm position, it only works on the rhythm pickup because that's the pickup that is actually being flipped with the phase. So if you would tap that, when it's in the default position, it's the inner slug coil on both humbuckers that's operative. But if you pull the phase switch, then it will make the screw coil operative. So now it's giving you an additional sound.
Oh, I see. Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah. So now you're expanding your tonal options. Another thing with the phase switch too, a good friend of mine, Derek St. Holmes, this is his theory and the way he uses it, because he has me reverse the phase on all his guitars. He'll be in the middle, out of phase. Now you have that, classic Peter Green sound.
Yes.
But then you can back one of the volumes down just to 9 or 8, and now you're decreasing that phase effect. And now you can favor one pickup over the other and have a subtle different shade of in phase and out of phase. And you could do that by rolling the rhythm pickup volume down or the bridge, depending on if you want it, to favor one pickup over the other. So he looks at it as that's providing really 5 distinctive tones with a 3-way switch, just by using that, the shading that you can get with the out of phase sounds.
Interesting, very interesting. Okay, so now you had mentioned Peter Green right now, and I mean, is this can you get that same vibe that what you would get like on our Greenie guitar?
Very similar, sure.
Very similar. Okay,
sure.
cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So that, because when I think of that tone, I think of Peter Green, I think of Jimmy Page, and it's interesting because that tone, it kind of like cuts through in some weird way, even though you think of it canceling each other out.
Yeah, even though it kind of attenuates your volume somewhat because of the tonal change, it kind of pulls you in.
Yes.
It gives you that very thick mid-range kind of thing that just kind of draws the listener in. So that's a classic example of sometimes you don't have to go big, you have to, just be distinctive, to pull the listener in. And that's the really cool vibe of that out of phase sound.
Love it. Now we had mentioned the pure bypass. Yeah. Now, from my understanding, it bypasses all the controls and it goes straight to the bridge pickup, right?
That's correct.
No matter where you're at.
That's correct.
Now, why is it that it gets such a different sound when it bypasses all the electronics in that pure bypass state?
Well, when, for one, like we touched off, you can use it as a preset, but just simply, if you're in the bridge position with everything on 10, right? Mm-hmm. And you pull that pure bypass, you're going to get a little boost because now you don't have the loading of the pots. If you're in the bridge position with both the bridge volume and tone on 10, now each of those pots are 500K. That's 500K of loading, combined, affecting that pickup. When you pull that pure bypass, now the pickup is going directly to the jack.
Okay.
So you'll get a little bit of boost and a little bit more high end because there's less resistive loading because of the pots.
So even if the pots are all the way up, you're still getting some sort of resistance.
Right.
And is this the same thing like with the tone capacitors as well?
The tone capacitors factor in slightly, but with and that's a different subject there.
Sure.
But with the volumes, and that was one of the first changes I made when I started at Gibson. They were still using 300K for the volumes. That happened in the early 70s.
Right. Okay.
And the folks when I first started didn't understand the effects of the loading, and they thought a pot on 10 is a pot on 10. Well, not if it's a different value. So I took a 500K linear pot, put a piece of masking tape on the guitar, put a meter to it, and since it was a linear pot, you go from 10 to 6, and that's 300K. So I'm like, do you want your pickup to sound like that, or do you want it to sound like that?
Gotcha.
So, there's that period between 73 and 2011 where, a lot of the stock Gibson guitars had 300K pots. So you can simply place the pots and have, more performance out of that guitar.
Very cool.
Now everything is standard, out of USA and custom. Everything uses the 500K vintage audio taper pots all around volumes and tones.
Okay, got it.
So it's better performing and it's historic.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, plus and plus right there.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's great to see, these extra options on the studio. I'm liking the fact that we're expanding the line.
Yeah.
And now there's like a little something for everyone that wants to stay in that particular area of our offerings, right?
Yeah, and it's a testament to the studio popularity.
Yeah.
And the history, because like I said, all these generations of players have been playing the studio, and just like our standard, and how we've expanded that line, different features and different aesthetics appeal to different people. So as they vocalize what they're wanting, that just calls for us to expand those options.
I mean, the first thing is always like a look of a guitar, and then obviously the sound and the playability, and all that goes into all the factors. I mean, I guess if someone wants a little more simplified offering from the studio, they can do the studio that I'm holding. Mm-hmm. And then if somebody really needs those extra tonal options, the contoured heel, The ebony fretboard. I know that's an interesting one too with tone woods. We could have a tone woods discussion all day long, but like I know that ebony does a little something different to that tone, like a fretwood, like rosewood or maplewood.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah. So it gives you a little bit more brilliance because for how hard and dense it is, and then it's the feel. So sometimes it's about sound, and sometimes it's about feel, or sometimes simply look.
Right.
Certain colors or models look really striking with an ebony fingerboard, and sometimes that plays in, and sometimes it's that subtle tonal change, and then it's the feel.
Sure.
I mean, if you're one of the, especially bluesy or classic rock player who does a lot of bending, sometimes the feel of the fingerboard, and there's no right or wrong with that. Some guys, because they do that, they prefer the ebony because it's, slipperier or has less,
coarse or
less feel or coarseness, right? Whereas rosewood is a bit more grainy, but to some people that's what they like about it because of that feel. Because of that grittiness, they can kind of have a little bit more control. So there's no right or wrong.
Sure.
That's why you have to offer it all.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, that's awesome. I love the breakdown. My last question for you here is, now that we've gone through these on the sessions, a couple of different colors. You're holding the cobalt blue burst. I've got the translucent ebony behind you there. Now that's got slightly darker hardware.
Yeah, it's a black chrome, and it's a new black chrome we've transitioned to. It's almost like a black nickel.
Okay.
So depending on the lighting, it can look very dark or almost like chrome. And it's kind of upscale and has a bit more subdued vibe.
It's got a nice look to it. Yeah, very nice. Stealth, a little more stealth.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, depending on the color, it just is very
attractive. Very cool. The honey burst is behind us. And then I believe the last one here on my right side is the bourbon burst. Really nice there too.
Yeah, I love bourbon. Bourbon is one of those colors where, if you're trying to decide which Les Paul should I get, the classic cherry sunburst or the tobacco, and you can't make up your mind. Bourbon's kind of right in the middle,
Right.
It's right there, And it's very rich looking. It's a cool color.
And then the pickups, we said 57 Classics versus Burstbuckers. Is there just like
Burstbucker Pro,
kind of like a very simple way to
the
break
easiest
down
way between
difference?
the Burstbucker families and the 57 Classic families. 57 Classic and we have the 57 Classic, 57 Classic Plus, the Super 57, and they're all progressively hotter versions of that 57 platform. Starting with the 57 Classic, that was just the PAF style pickup.
The classic tone.
Classic tone and the classic wind with Alnico 2 magnets as Seth Lover dictated it, right? Okay. This is it. This many winds, Alnico 2 magnets, this is what it is by blueprint spec. So they're matched coils. Well, the reality is, over the years, as we reverse engineer a lot of those classic PAF pickups from back in the day, there's a lot of variation because of the machine technology that we had at the same time, and the people. There's that human element. So back then they may be winding a pickup coil, and then the brake whistle blows. So they stop it, take it off, go to break, and come back, put another one on. Or maybe they look at the clock. The brake whistle will blow in a few minutes. I'll let this one go on a little bit longer, right? We discover that variation, and that imparts a character.
Right.
And there was a wide variety. So now we have the Burstbucker 1, 2, and 3, the custom buckers with Alnico 3 magnets. Most of the Burstbuckers will all have the Alnico 2. The Burstbucker Pro now follows suit with the Burstbucker series with the offset coils, but now it's using Alnico 5.
Got it. Okay.
Because in the early 60s we transitioned to that, and we still had that mismatch or potential for mismatch offset coils.
I see.
So they're all just capturing a different segment in our history.
I see, and that's why they're offered again on some of our specific models when they're year-specific or decade-specific.
Sometimes, or sometimes there's a lot of fans, with the studio where they want that Burstbucker kind of voice, but with a little bit more edge. Maybe they are familiar with that early 60s sound, right? So it's going to offer that. And then with the tapping and splitting and, all those features, that gives you a little bit more under the hood, to manipulate with those controls.
Yes.
So the 57 Classics now, blueprint spec. They're going to be a more, I call it a homogenized, smoother, fatter tone.
Yeah.
As opposed to the Burstbucker series with offset coils, which impart a treble peak to one of the coils, which kind of imparts a little bit of that P90 character to the humbucker voice.
Got it, okay.
So it kind of goes, and straddles that tone between what the blueprint spec would sound like versus a P90, and it kind of in between there in the different levels.
Very cool, very cool.
Yeah.
That's a great breakdown. Okay, yeah, because these are the most popular ones I think about, where Burstbuckers and 57 Classics, come to mind. And I can see why we're putting them in these models as well, because you want to have that blueprint, or that that snapshot of what a real Les Paul is. And it's great to see that these are offering those such classic choices there on the pickups. I mean, basically the engine of the guitar, right?
That's right.
Fantastic. Well, man, we're going to put the session through its paces. We're going to do a little playing. I'm going to go through all the different, electronics there, and I think we're going to have some fun with it today. So, man, I appreciate you stopping by as always, man, and the insights and the knowledge and the education, man.
I always enjoyed it.
Much appreciated, man. Thank you so much. Everyone out there, again, Mr. Jim DeCola. So while I was talking to Jim, we mentioned those extra features like coil taps, phase, and pure bypass. Instead of explaining those more to you, let me just go ahead and show you a plain example here where all those applications come together and really shine. So back to that one thing I told you about in the beginning. How is this going to replace one of your most important pedals on your pedal board, right? Well, let's think about it this way. All of us have at least an overdrive or a clean boost, right, on our board. With the pure bypass feature, you can take that clean boost right off the board. You got more real estate now to add in something else if you want. Having that control right on the guitar makes it just as useful as if you had to step on a clean boost pedal. Just getting to play these guitars today, they're fantastic. They're easy to play. They sound great. The neck profile is really comfy. I do love the weight really body. The cool colors are there. You've got your cobalt blue burst like I'm holding here. There's also that honey burst, that classic bourbon burst, and of course that translucent ebony with that darker hardware color on there, making it really sleek, including that soft shell case where you can just throw the guitar in real quick, strap it on your back, head to the gig or to that rehearsal. So these have come a long way. Really great to see these in the studio lineup. So with the new studio sessions, you've got more advanced tone shaping features, a little bit easier on the upper access to those frets. Just a really great option for the working musician, whether you're in the studio recording, having to layer multiple parts, doing it fast. We all know time is money in those situations. Or if you're on the stage, you're in a big time cover band, or your band in general just has a lot of different instruments that you need to switch through. We all know sometimes it could be a chore to switch guitars and have to keep tabs on multiple instruments at a gig. So with the new studio session, you can see how we've made playing the guitar even easier. So there you have it, the all-new Les Paul Studio Session. Really great guitar with a ton of features. And if you want to check out the Les Paul Studio as well, make sure you head over to see that clip here on the channel. Thanks for watching.